Good morning, everyone. My name is Christine Anderson, and I am the Anti-Trafficking and Runaway and Homeless Youth Coordinator for OCFS in the Division of Youth Development and Partnerships for Success. I want to welcome you all here this morning. We are so glad that you could be here to join us. I do want to do a few housekeeping items before we get started. If you encounter IT issues with any of our presentations, please email info@welfareresearch.org and help will be sent your way, or you can type your question in the chat box if your IT issue occurs during the presentation, and we will do everything we can to help you out. All of our presentations are being recorded and will be posted in HSLC for future viewings. If you need a certificate for your participation in any of our presentations this week, please send me an email. I will type my name in the chat box so you have it. Next week, we are going to send out a post-summit survey as well as materials from our presentations today. So please keep your eyes peeled for email with a survey link and some materials. And we look forward to your feedback so we can incorporate it into future sessions. Lastly, and possibly most importantly, participants, you will be automatically muted upon entry for all the presentations. Each presenter has about 45 minutes of content to share with you, including some interaction. And then we're going to reserve about 15 minutes for Q&A. Please, we ask that you try to hold all of your questions till the end, and then you can enter them into the Q&A box, and our presenter will get to as many questions as they possibly can. We will have a transcript report of all the questions, so if we don't get to one of your questions, we will still be able to get you an answer. With that said, I want to take a quick minute and introduce this morning's presenter. Her name is Christy Morin, and she is with us from the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. She has been with NCMEC since 2002 and currently serves as a program manager, for case management services in the Missing Children Division. Since NCMEC has launched their Children Missing from Care and Child Sex Trafficking initiatives, Ms. Morin has been a part of the multi-divisional team that creates policies and guidelines during the onset of these bodies of work. In addition, she works as a liaison to state and county social service and juvenile justice agencies in regards to the implementation of reporting children missing from care to NCMEC. We are thrilled that she's with us today. And with that said, I'm going to turn it over to Christy.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. I hope you can see my screen. I'm very excited to be able to have this opportunity. I have worked with OCFS since 2015, and they are amazing. New York is an amazing state, and they are on the cutting edge of everything. And I've worked with them on various fronts, but today they asked me to talk specifically about internet safety, and it pertains to parents, guardians, and communities. So some of these slides, which you can download, they're free to the public, and I'll get to that, kind of are geared toward parent interaction. But in looking at the content that I present, I want to go ahead and just encourage you to think how this can be adapted to your body of work. And I encourage you to not only look at this as, you know, how it applies to individual children, but the children that you interact with on a daily basis, because I think some of it needs to go ahead and be adopted into the setting in which you work. And I just want to take a moment to remind you that internet safety, this pertains to the communication you have with individual children and how you can stay on top of it and monitor it. But I do want to bring to your attention that a lot of this pertains to adults preying on young. But I would really like to point out something very strategic, which is that what we are seeing is an uptick in the use of the internet in terms of the victimization of children by other children, and how that's dealt with, and how you can also identify children that may fall into a certain category that you interact with that perhaps makes them more vulnerable than other individuals and may need a little bit of an extra helping hand or guidance. So, having said that, Netsmartz. Okay, so Netsmartz is completely and totally awesome. I'm not sure if many of you are aware of it. They work on this constantly. They've put it on a new platform. You can see the address down at the bottom. What's awesome about this site is that it's used, you know, in schools, and it's used for younger children, but they also now have a teen version of it where teens can go on and actually go through simulated life situations that they encounter. And so this is a great resource, whether it's for law enforcement, social services, juvenile justice, schools. Like I said, a lot of schools adopt this and actually teach it within the school system. So I want to talk about online. A lot of times, you know, people kind of have this narrow view of what's online. And so it would really be beneficial for me if we could do the first question that I have. And if I could just get a better sense of the audience in terms of what profession would you fall under. So if you can take a moment and fill that out, I'd greatly appreciate it. It gives me a better idea of, you know, what is your interaction? How can you adopt this to policy and bring it into different organizations? Okay, and do we have a rough estimate of the audience? So I'll address all types of online interaction. So it looks state and county social service agencies, juvenile justice. I am so glad to see that. NPOs, wonderful. Government and legal positions, also wonderful, because we find that a lot of this internet activity leads to prosecution, law enforcement as well. If you work directly with youth, and are you able to assess their online accounts and interactions? And that's very beneficial too. This is geared towards online enticement, but one of the things I would like just to say, or not online enticement, but the monitoring of youth, is when you make a report to NCMEC, internet information and interactions is so important, and that's a completely different presentation. But if you have that information when you're making reports to NCMEC, it helps so much in terms of analysis and being able to identify victims and also perpetrators. So going back to online activity, obviously there's computers. Depending on your interaction with juveniles, I don't know whether they just have access to computers at their house, at their facilities where they're being housed. They definitely have access at schools. Cell phones, I know that's hard to keep a handle on, especially when it comes to child sex trafficking. Gaming consoles, something that I am going to be very verbose about, because gaming consoles are very, very dangerous. E-readers and tablets. So, having said that, it appears, okay. So, what do children do online? Obviously, as I mentioned, this is more geared towards, parental interaction, but this is just to open the framework of how can you take these things and apply it to the environment in which you're interacting with children. I would have to say that, social media sites, even if you think you have a handle on them, there are just so many social media sites and they keep popping up. And your ability to be able to monitor what's going on all depends on privacy settings and things of that nature. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, a lot of those agencies actually report directly to NCMEC. We have a cyber tip line, and they make reports if they see anything that they feel may be exploitation of children. Texting and playing games on cell phones. Texting can lead into a lot of darker areas, but even playing games, if you haven't noticed, so many games are online and they can play in an open forum, meaning depending on their privacy settings, they can be approached by almost anybody and asked to play a game with them. A lot of children use Google for their homework, and I know personally I have children that are in their teens, and you can simply be Googling something and all of a sudden something else pops up and leads them somewhere. Same with YouTube. You could be searching for something and then all of a sudden you're exposed to other sites. Virtual world games like Minecraft on the internet. They have those chat boxes up. People actually lure children through that, get them to do things that you wouldn't think, say things that you wouldn't think, send photos, meet them offline. So these are all things that, you want to kind of think about. It may seem innocent, but when you actually get copies of those chats, it's quite disturbing what can happen. And that's a big area where a lot of times people don't identify that, oh, my child's just playing on the Xbox. And, one thing to always ask is, who are you playing with? Do you know them? Because anybody can join a game. So you just want to keep up to date on what are your youth using, what apps, what gaming consoles. And then it's cumbersome, but monitoring privacy settings and then also educating yourself about those apps and how you can have some control over it and even access to their profiles. So yeah, technology can't catch everything. So you have to communicate. And a lot of times when we're dealing with youth that are in social services or juvenile justice, they're already in a different situation to begin with. So this leads into some brainstorming because geographically there are different games that are popular, or let's say a particular school, TikTok is very popular, things of that nature. So you have to have the ability to have some kind of forum to gather this information, because if you approach in a specific manner, you may get somebody shutting down on you. But if you're assessing, let's say at intake, or if you're assessing, how are interactions at school going? Oh, do you have the ability to communicate with your friends? You can find out that kind of information just through normal conversation. Asking them what their favorite app is, and definitely talking about like what pictures are they posting, and what's appropriate to post and what's not appropriate to post. So inappropriate content. Sometimes kids do things and they say, oh, it's no big deal. Everybody's doing it. Or it's a matter of their safety settings when they're online. You know, people unfortunately can get access to IP addresses, and that can narrow down where a child's playing or where a child's, you know, living, and sexting and things of that nature. You know, cyberbullying, that's a huge thing. And unfortunately, the rise in online enticement, not just through, you know, sites like Backpage, which we all obviously knew what happened there. It's as soon as one shut down, it's moved to something else. But Facebook, you'd be surprised what's left open on Facebook, and the links you can see between friendships, photos that are posted that indicate markers of child sex trafficking or even gang activity. So online enticement is now taking place not just on social media forums, but within apps and things of that nature. And so that's why it's really important to kind of be aware of these things, but also be aware of the gaming consoles and the chats that are taking place within those gaming consoles. So there's a risk at every age. You know, looking at inappropriate content and making sure there's online privacy setting, passwords, teaching them what strong passwords are, not trusting anybody you meet online. This is hard, even if you are dealing with your own children or you're dealing with a vast community of children. Sometimes it's we as caregivers or people who are trying to educate, we can go ahead and tell them these things, but we're also dealing with the environment of every single child is different. And, you know, if a child has a diagnosis of, and this is not applicable to every child, but you have to think about like the child you're encountering. Let's say a child has ADHD or ADD, right? And you're trying to teach them all these things, like don't trust anybody online, don't do this, don't do that. And then they're in the moment and they're online and they know all the rules, but then they turn around and they do something that they know they shouldn't do. And so those are the kinds of things you always want to check in with. If you do have gaming consoles in facilities where children are being housed, making sure somebody's monitoring it, you know, checking browsing history, putting safety guidelines. Tweens and teens, cyberbullying, sexting, posting personal and inappropriate information and meeting offline. Simple things like, hey, I'm going to hang with my girls at the mall. Well, if you're telling your hometown and it's visible, you know, you're making all that information available. And unfortunately, what we see with youth is it's not a matter of them having, you know, 100 close friends. They meet somebody, they think they're cool, they add them to their friend list. And before you know it, they have 300 or 400 friends, and their personal information is not just shared with those individuals they're friends with, but depending on their privacy settings, friends of the friends may have access to that. So that's definitely something that we are trying to combat as well. So inappropriate contact, you know, talking about pornography, what is pornography? And that's really hard conversation, especially with younger youth, and especially because you're dealing with the outside sources. You know, these children are going out there and they're going to school or they're living with other children who have more access or who are doing things, and children want to fit in and they want to be accepted. Excessive violence, even in the video games and everything, children become desensitized. Sometimes they see that violence in the day-to-day. Sometimes violence is directed at them. Hate speech, that's a huge thing in school. And I don't think what children realize is stuff you do online, you can be prosecuted for, but also the school can take action against you. We had a situation recently in an area close to me where there was a party and there was all this hate speech, and the whole county board of education had to get involved. And it's a matter of also educating children that, like, you may not be the one who is posting it, but if you're liking a comment or something like that, you're reinforcing that. Risky and illegal behaviors. A lot of times children aren't aware of what certain terminology means in certain settings, especially geographically. So they may think like, oh, I saw this emoji, or I saw somebody else, one of my friends, using this terminology, and then they go use it, and they don't realize the implications of what that is. So it opens them up to a lot more than what's just on the surface. So having these conversations is definitely something that you want to have. Obviously, this is a hard situation to adapt to certain environments. You know, don't frighten them, listen attentively, stay calm, tell them it's not their fault, answer questions, help them report it. Unfortunately, we're reactive. We find out about these things after the fact. But if we start laying the groundwork within, you know, group homes, or educating foster parents, or even with juvenile justice system, or, you know, even having a police officer come in and talk about situations where things can get turned into a legal manner and that there can be prosecution. Just that general kind of openness, opening that pathway to talk. And sometimes that means breaking it down into smaller groups. But definitely telling them it's not their fault, especially when they're younger and more impressionable, because they may not realize what they're doing. And, you know, even having a survey where, like, you send it out and you say, hey, just answer these questions for me. You know, nobody's in trouble, but tell me what's going on. What are you seeing? And then always help them report. And there's a multitude of ways you can report. NCMEC has a multitude of ways you can report, and I'll definitely get into that. But just allowing them to know that they can talk to somebody. And it may be cumbersome because these things may be taking place right in the facility where the child is living, or within the school, or within their foster family. And so having that openness is definitely something that you want to provide. And once again, I go back to Netsmartz. You know, have it available. Have them play the games. It's fun. My kids play the games. The graphics are amazing, and they're really fun. And there's tons and tons and tons of resources for everybody that interacts with children. So this is definitely something that once you've established that something has happened, turn off the screen, you know, use the back button, tell a trusted adult, report it to the website or app. You can also report to NCMEC, and that's at cybertipline.org. Now, I will tell you that I myself have done the screen captures of stuff. So depending on, even if they just turn off the monitor, you know, the more information you can provide to law enforcement or the app or NCMEC, the better it is. You don't want to go too far, but an example is I had somebody who approached my daughter on a gaming site, and as much as I have taught her and everything like that, he was very suave, and he had a conversation with her and had her talking about stuff she shouldn't have. And then when she said she was going to get her mother, he threatened her and told her that he could find her and that he knew where she lived and that he has so many usernames that they'll never find him. So these are very scary things. So those are things that you want to think about too. And those are the reasons why it's like, okay, turn off the screen, shut the screen down, you know, and then that's a good opportunity for you to have a conversation with that youth. Talking about what not to post. Inappropriate or illegal behavior. Now, I know there's some of you out there laughing hysterically, especially if you're in law enforcement, or if you're really involved in analytical work, which we do a lot of at NCMEC. You would not believe how much stuff people post online. NCMEC does not have the capability to access any information. We are not an investigative agency, but we do have analytical support and things of that nature. We do work missing child cases. But you would be surprised how many people allow their profiles to be open, and the stuff that they're saying and the emojis they're using and what they mean. Offensive language, even going into the sensitivity of something may not be offensive to you, but a very vulnerable community is the LGBTQ plus community. And so one that makes them even more susceptible to this type of environment and wanting to fit in and participating in things, but two, it also targets them as well. So explaining that kind of offensive language is just not cussing or things of that nature. Threats of violence, underage drinking or drug use. This has come out in schools across the US, people posting pictures of such things and it getting around in the schools. And hate speech. You know, what is hate speech? And what do I do if I see it? And what happens if I'm even involved in a conversation that's going on online and I see hate speech? You don't have to post it yourself, but you're now an observer. So, you know, you just want to make sure that schools are getting involved. Schools are taking this very, very seriously. And once a child hits live on something, it's up there on the internet. And even though you take it down, that doesn't mean that it hasn't been copied and it's not gone forever. So what can you do? Now, this is something, again, where depending on your interaction with youth, depending on whether your agency has a policy, which maybe this opens up the doorway to looking at, okay, it seems insurmountable. It seems insurmountable even for us, for law enforcement. It's just such a huge hole to fall into. But even setting ground rules, you know, letting them know, like, okay, this is appropriate, this isn't, this is what you can go on, this is what you can't go on. I don't know the laws in your state and how much you guys can control the interactions, but if you do have common computers that the children use, making sure that somebody set it up so that they can't access certain sites and that you can capture details on who's using the computer and if something's been circumvented. Research things before you buy them. If it's an app or anything like that, or if it's, let's say, even a, let's say you have an Xbox and they want a game. One thing I always look at is, okay, is that game accessible through Xbox online as well? Or can they only play it off of the actual game cartridge. Even with Nintendo 3DS and everything like that, you can connect with people. Go beyond the safeguards, you know, and kind of tighten things up and have a consistent policy or a way of at least trying to think about how to wrap your brains around what's going on, because you can only control what you know is going on. And unfortunately, stuff happens at schools. It happens in libraries. So even checking in with your local library and saying like, hey, what are the safeguards that you have, just so that we are aware of what your policy is. And report. I talked about, you know, platforms, gaming platforms, things of that nature. And so, you know, engage with them. What platforms are you on? Who are you playing with? Are those people, are they friends from school? You know, you can verify they're from school, things of that nature. And then anytime you see a child, you know, spending increased time online, if they're getting upset, if they're not allowed to have access to their device, if you start seeing weird things showing up, gifts, things of that nature, different forms of electronics, they move all of a sudden from one device to another device, you know, those are kind of some red flags. And like I said, the hardest thing is to get engaged and get them to trust you and talk to you. They really just don't understand oftentimes the repercussions, and they also don't understand that their quote unquote friends could be the ones that could be causing some of the problems. So we already went over this, you know, conversations with unknown people in an online game, creating videos and streaming them. There are so many platforms for doing this, and so it's so intense trying to keep track of every single thing and what's best to do. And one thing that's nice though is most apps, games, even cell phones have privacy settings. It takes time, but even if you develop like a little committee and you say, okay, hey, you invest this site, I'll investigate that site and everything and change the information around. It's funny how even if you look at a child and you say, what are you on? And they say something to you, but you turn around and you have the knowledge and you're like, yeah, I'm well aware of what can happen on that. It annoys them, but it also lets them know that you're engaged with them. Definitely check-ins online. Those are very, you know, dangerous. You don't want that to be something that children are doing, because you're checking in here, and if somebody is looking for you or going after you, then, you know, you're telling them exactly where you are. Now, on the other hand, sometimes check-ins are a good tool to use against child sex trafficking. So these are just things that you want to look and see, you know, hey, are they checking in online? Where are they going? Where are they hanging out? And then oftentimes it leads you to a wider audience of who are they checking in with and things of that nature, and who are they with. So you just want to be mindful of those things. We talked about personal information, passwords. We ourselves have to do cybersecurity. Passwords should be, sometimes don't even answer the question. Put in a phrase, you know, make sure there's uppercase, lowercase, make sure there's a symbol, something of that nature, because people can easily get access to passwords And once you get access, then, you know, they can get into all your things. As well as, you know, if they're, let's say they're using their email and they're using it for homework or what have you, if they don't shut completely out of that window, it's accessible to other people. You know, don't put your home address out there. Don't give your cell phone. Don't give your email address. If you look at a lot of profiles online, on social media, they provide all this information. And so, you know, their understanding of what could be the repercussions of you doing this. And you may not be doing anything wrong, but somebody else can have that information. And now you've only just exposed yourself, but, you know, you've exposed everybody else who's in that environment. Identity theft, online scams, hacking, online enticement, and sextortion. I think everybody's kind of familiar with this. The one thing I would say, though, is online scams and teaching that to children is a little bit hard because they're on YouTube or they're on another site. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with any of the sites that I have mentioned. They have all taken great lengths to be protective, but things pop up. And sometimes it's hard for adults to know whether to click on them or not. So one thing I can say is, you know, teaching them tools like if something pops up, hover over the address that it's coming from. Like, does it look legitimate? And the best thing to do is just don't engage in anything unless, you know, an adult says that it's okay. A lot of children, unfortunately, they're being hacked. And obviously, online enticement is something that, you know, you always kind of wonder, like, was it always out there and it's getting worse, or are we just identifying it more? More and more, we see so much online enticement. And it also speaks to your ability as professionals to be able to identify not just protocols or procedures or just knowledge of this, but children who are more vulnerable for this. Children who are feeling isolated, who want to fit in. Sometimes they're on sites just looking for friendship. Sometimes you'll hear a child say, like, well, all my friends are online and that's why I'm online. And so being able to, even if you help one child and you identify that perhaps they're even more at risk, and taking time with that one child, it can definitely make a huge difference. You know, it can lead to face-to-face meetings. It can lead to a child being turned into a victim of trafficking. It can lead to so many things. So what can you do? Well, that's easier said than done, right? I would definitely encourage you to get onto Netsmartz and look at all the information we have there and talk about establishing rules, learn about reporting options, help them set their privacy settings, passwords, and definitely talk about their friends lists. Who's on them? Sexting, unfortunately, this seems to be increasing, and sexting can also be considered like pornography, depending on the situation. So you just want to make sure that people aren't taking photos, aren't talking about sexual activities. It's a gateway into something else. And it starts off small and then gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And oftentimes it's not the child maybe that initiates it, although we've seen that, but it's more of somebody starting the interaction with them, sending pictures of themselves. So just making them aware. And then, you know, you do not, definitely let them know, like if they receive anything like that, they definitely do not want to forward it or do anything of that nature, but just report it. This is definitely something that is the older group of individuals and teens and everything like that. And, you know, unfortunately, it's almost like it's common, like it's okay, it's no big deal. But what people don't realize is that, like I said, you could face legal action, but, you know, things happen and people get angry and then they forward that picture of you around school, or they post it, or, you know, it just doesn't create good boundaries in terms of what a healthy relationship is, especially at that age. And it's just become so mainstream in our society that it's a really hard thing to address. But consequences of sexting, you know, the humiliation, it's bullying, and then blackmail purposes. This too can lead into child sex trafficking. Well, now that I have these photos of you, if you don't do this, you know, I'm gonna send them to your family. Definitely face school discipline and obviously police involvement. So I think when it becomes real that they understand that it's not just as simple as one thing, that it could lead to these consequences, that it becomes real for them. And that's also a good opportunity to kind of bring that relationship with law enforcement in with children, and let them have that rapport and exchange, and let them ask questions. You'd be surprised what they'd ask. You know, talk about consequences. We talked about healthy relationships. And then cybertipline.org, one-stop shopping. Solicitation, social networking sites, it's usually older teens. We're seeing more and more solicitation by peers. And, you know, most are not bothered by it. And grooming, it leads to grooming, exploiting their natural curiosity, gradually introducing explicit images using adult status to control child's behavior, offering gifts and cell phones. I will say one thing, though, that is very, very prevalent now is we're talking about grooming and we're talking about social media, but we're also seeing within group homes and things of that nature where maybe there is a groomer, a peer groomer that is in that group home. And then they open up the conversation between themselves and the perpetrator. And it's a sense of providing family and being part of a family. And the same things, you know, with gangs. Grooming goes on online in terms of gang relationships and things of that nature. I think, you know, with child sex trafficking being on such the forefront the last couple of years, a lot of people are becoming very aware of what the signs are. Minimizing the screen or flipping off the device, I think that's the biggest red flag for everybody. But these are just a reminder of what some of those signs are. Talk to your child, know your child's online friends, call the police, cyber tip line. I'm going to fly through some things. Kids are capable. This is just a chat log for you to see, an example, and then report. anyone who sends your child photos or videos containing obscene content, who it came from, who were they speaking to, in what kind of sexual manner, how did the child meet the person. Bullying, cyberbullying. This is an all-encompassing list of what cyberbullying can be. And it is very prevalent and it is very damaging. The difference between cyberbullying and bullying, it spreads a lot faster and a larger audience, and it does follow the children at home. So there's the cyberbully, the victim, and the bystander. These are some signs that the child may be a victim of cyberbullying. And then how can you help? Support your problem and help your child solve it. Consider saving the evidence, blocking them, setting up new accounts. Talk to the school. Please talk to the school and report to Cyber Tip Line. So cyberbullying behaviors. These are things that are harder to see, but they're in there just to kind of accent what it looks like from the actual person who's doing the bullying. So again, it's also the same set of things. Monitor the behavior, same as you would offline. Expectations, consequences, model good online behavior. And then talk. It's all about talking. It's all about encouraging them to stand up. If people are seeing this happening and they're a bystander, explain to them by not providing support, they're enabling it. And that they have just as much power as anyone else to help another individual. So filtering monitors, we already talked about all of this. It's a lot, but it's basically been throughout the entire presentation that you want to kind of take these steps. So Netsmartz, this just is a little bit of a snippet, and it can be used for children, adults, schools, care providers, law enforcement. This is a little bit of something. So they have a netsmartkids.org, but now they have a teen site, which is awesome. So I'm sorry I rushed through the end a little bit, but a lot of it is the same messaging where you want to go ahead and, you know, just see what you're able to do in terms of your interactions.
Great. Thanks, Christy. We do have some time for Q&A. So I'm just going to go over real quick once again where that is. So if you are on the bottom of your Zoom screen, there is a little icon that says Q&A with a couple word bubbles, and you can type your question right in there. Christy, can you see the questions? Yes, right?
So I see one question, and then I'm not sure if people put stuff in the chat. So hold on. We've not allowed our daughter to engage in gaming. However, she likes to watch videos of other kids gaming, such as, right there with you, Luigi's Mansion. I'm curious about your thoughts. Okay. This is my thought, okay? This is my thoughts. It in no way represents Netsmartz. My children do the same thing. There's this guy that's from like England, and he does all these tutorials and everything. I think it depends on if the video they're watching is age appropriate, right? You've looked into it. Is it age appropriate? Watch some of the gaming videos and see what types of language they're doing, and also what types of violence and things of that nature. So I would, it's an individual basis. And then take into account the maturity level of your child. TikTok, yeah. I I had my son deleted 3 times and he downloaded it again, and he is 14. I work at NCMEC and they keep telling me, you're overprotective, you're overprotective, you're overprotective. You know, it's a battle. It's a battle in your own home. So imagine what it is for interacting with youth that, you know, are out there, and you're responsible for their case management. These are just, I appreciate all the questions, but these are just, I want to be clear. This is not NCMEC saying this. This is just me and just my knowledge. So I want to be very, very clear. My kids love Minecraft. They absolutely love it. And it has a lot to do with coding. And so they are not allowed to go online and play Minecraft. They are not allowed to play in somebody else's world unless it's their cousin's world or each other's worlds. And you can do DS to DS, but they're not allowed to play Minecraft with people they don't know. NCMEC is the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. That's where I work. Oh yeah, thank you. So is she saying net? No, it's Netsmartz. And I believe the last, throughout the presentation, it gave the, it's NETSMARTZ. So you can Google it. It has its own site, its own platform, and then it has all the resources, and even this presentation I just gave, which I kind of chopped down a little bit, you can actually go and watch it online if you missed anything. And then they also now have a teen version of it that's interactive. Players online rather than restricting on, what about just not interacting with other players online? Okay, well, once again, I will just have to say that that goes into the maturity of your child that you're working with. But the other thing too is if they really have a bunch of friends that like to play a specific game online, they can create their own room. You can vet who's in that room, and you can set up privacy settings so that nobody else is allowed to enter that room. So, yeah, contact info on the slide. My name wasn't on there. I am more than happy to speak to anybody. Right, professionals with kids. This and family social worker system. I really tried to gear this because there isn't one, and I actually brought this up to training that is geared towards, you know, professionals and, you know, how do you deal with this in these settings? And then the intricacies of like, is the child, what type of living setting are they in? What type of rules? And I've worked with Madeline's for so many years, and I enjoy working with New York so much. But that's why I was trying to give examples of, because everybody's situation is different, if you can start looking into it and look at your specific environment in which you're interacting with children, and if it's a group home or a foster home or something like that, set up some type of protocols. Start with what do they have access with within your own facility, right? And then how can you get a handle on their use of that? And also, I wish I knew more. Like, I would be more than happy for anybody to contact me and talk to me about like how their specific interactions are taking place with children, because I can kind of give you more suggestions. But if you are dealing with children that are placed in foster homes, you know, maybe part of it is that part of them being a foster parent is that, you know, they need to receive information on online activity and be held accountable for monitoring what that child's using, and you know, make that part of their practice in terms of having these children in their home. What phones are they using? What devices do they have access to? But that also means like opening that communication, that you want them to communicate with you what you're hearing from the child and or children back to you guys. So it's almost like starting from ground zero and developing like a policy base. You know, how are we going to take this on? Are we going to look at the levels and tiers of care and then come up with a plan for those things? And then I unfortunately am not as versed as to like what are the compliances with children having cell phones and their accessibility to those cell phones and things of that nature within your state or within a certain agency. And so knowing some of those more intricate things can help develop more of a plan. How many children are you responsible for interacting with? Is somebody there, if you're in a lockdown facility for juvenile justice, or if a child's on probation, is there the ability that, you know, you can monitor what devices they have access to and things of that nature? I really tried to give you some ideas for the social worker setting and the juvenile justice setting and the policy setting. And I really wish I had more like intimate knowledge because that's part of my favorite part of my job is helping to build policy and looking at a larger scope item and breaking it down. And so, foster parenting trainer. I actually presented this at a foster parent and adoption agency, and they were floored by the stuff that I told them. Absolutely floored. And I even used examples of what my own children have encountered, and they walked out of there and they were like, holy cow. So I definitely think this is something that could be part of that training. And you can definitely, there may be a better suited presentation on the Netsmartz site, but I can definitely help you connect with that. But I think it should definitely be part of training. Children's visit, cyberbullying on Snapchat about it, but we couldn't. Okay, yeah, so that's another thing a lot of people do. Like Snapchat doesn't save stuff and everything like that. This is just me, but this is what if they're doing Snapchat on the phone and they're cyberbullying, teach the kids how to take screen captures on their phones, because a lot of them don't retain the logs or they don't retain them for a long time. But if you have images, that helps as well. And my child has been cyberbullied, and he's in the LGBTQ community. And actually, he just wanted to fit in, and he was joking around and dancing, and thought he was getting along with everybody. They took a video of him and posted it within 2 minutes. And then I got a call from the school, and the school was like, well, I had him take it down. And I'm like, yeah, no, that's not the point. So screen captures, like for those types of things. Sorry. Yes, foster care. Okay, so foster parents, all that stuff, foster agencies. Like I said, I've done various presentations for individual organizations. And I love interacting and hearing what's going on. But yes, I do think that, and Madeline, maybe this is something that's not just like, maybe it's a layer like, okay, juvenile justice workers and social workers and caseworkers, but maybe it's more part of the training of like foster care placement, and the training of the staff and things of that nature, starting a little bit smaller, and then looking at things from a larger industry perspective. And maybe some things need to be, maybe things need to be honed down to specific sites. Like, we all know there are specific group homes where child sex trafficking recruitment is happening right in that home. The bottom girl's in the home. The bottom girl's flipping the phone. The bottom girl's the one that's telling them to go out. So, y'all have me excited. Like, I love tackling an issue and trying to help. We publish stories. So I can't really talk about if it's published by Netsmartz or it's if it's published by Netsmartz or it's in a presentation, it's sanitized. But we do provide success stories in situations. But the biggest thing I can say is, and I just want to make this one point, I'm so sorry we're running over. Please report to Netsmartz, please. New York is such a strong proponent of this. And if the child is actively missing, okay, then what you would do is you would go, and I deal with the children missing from care forum online. For those of you who have used it, it's going to get better. We're rebuilding a whole thing, but there's also the call center. But as much internet information that you can provide to us when you're making those reports, the better it is, because we have the ability then to do analytical analysis on those things. And we're a national clearinghouse. And it may be a bigger problem than what you think it is. If you have a child who is not being exploited, and we're talking about all that stuff, we're talking about pornography, child sex trafficking, all that stuff. If the child's not actively missing, but you're aware of what's going on, go to the cyber tip line and still make that report. Because you are building history now for that child in the event that if they ever go missing. So, and the apps are changing so fast. And we work with the FBI. Like I said, we're not, ICACs, all that stuff. So, I mean, the marshals are involved. We just have so many people. But keeping on top of those sites is just such a big, it's just cumbersome. Okay, so code words for trafficking. It really depends geographically. It really does. And it's also true like for LGBTQ youth. That's why I mentioned like during hate terminology, like somewhere it may be okay to call a child a certain thing, and in another place that term that's okay, you go somewhere else geographically and it's not okay in that community. And so, I mean, but there's this whole thing now where kids are talking online in pure emojis about trafficking and gangs. You guys want me to keep going, or?
I think we have time for one last question, and it's a very simple one, and a few people have asked it, so I want to make sure we get them an answer. And it's that they want to know if they are able to take the slides off of the website to use with either parent groups or their own community groups.
They are. They're actually, so the site, I actually downloaded the slides myself. You just have to say who you are and why you want to use them. And but there's a variety of presentations on there that are accessible to you and that they use in schools and everything like that. So I don't know if, is my information somewhere in case anybody needs to contact me? I didn't add it because it's a Netsmartz training that I gave you. So
we can send out your information when we send out the materials.
Okay.
I mean, you and I can communicate about what information you'd like me to distribute, and I'm happy to do that. So then everybody gets it and they can just use it as they need it, or if they don't need it right now, they'll have it for the future. Does that?
Yeah, no,
work?
that totally works. We'll communicate. And then the other thing too is, you know, check out the site. They're always updating it and everything like that. So just make sure that you're able to access the things. You just download it. It's
Awesome.
really easy. It
It is
free.
really easy. I can speak to that.
It's free. It's totally free.
Right.
I think the only thing is like they don't want you altering like the slide. And there is narratives underneath, which I just kind of cut short and talked because I have knowledge of all this. So, but yeah, gosh, there's so many questions. Maybe you can send out like, you know, if there is questions or things of that nature, we'll get a way for you to talk to me about it. And like I said, it's very cumbersome to know how to work this into you know, OCFS and juvenile justice and everything like that. But I definitely think it's something that can easily be done in certain areas. So if you have a specific question about, you know, how your interaction takes place or what have you, I'll never say like NCMEC says, but I love sharing information about what other states, counties, and agencies have done.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Christy. We're so glad you were here to share this with us. For people who are asking, you can get we will send out the website so you can get links to the slides. We will send out Christy's information next week with all of our summit materials. She's a wealth of knowledge and a great resource, so please utilize her. Thank you, Christy, again for being with us, and thank all of you for being with us. Communicate with your kids. Hope to see you all this afternoon, and have a great rest of your morning.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, guys.